Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the MYOB Advanced User Groups, our first online session. Firstly, just a big welcome to everybody. Thanks for giving us your time today and supporting us moving this initiative online. Before we get started, I'd just like to highlight a couple of features available to you throughout this presentation. Firstly, if you hover over the Zoom screen, you'll see a pop-up. At the bottom of the pop-up there is an icon with a Q with Q&A underneath it. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to submit any questions you have through there, and we will either address them at that point in the presentation or we'll cover it off later in the session. Understanding everybody's time is precious, especially at the moment. I would like to hand over to Ronnie Baskind, the CEO of Enterprise and Kilimanjaro. He will tell you a little bit more about that shortly. Over to you, Ronnie.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks very much for that introduction. Again, just a warm welcome to everyone. We did have an EXO user group online this morning, so this is in a way number 2. We hope that we are a little bit more professional than we were this morning. We had some audio problems, but thanks to everyone at short notice for being so accommodating and switching over from a physical location to a virtual location. Times like this bring out the best in people, and the venue was kind enough to deliver the catering to us, so the 4 of us over here have enjoyed a very substantial lunch, which you haven't unfortunately been able to share with. But just by way of starting, I wanted to say that as a company, Kilimanjaro/Enterprise is very aware of our responsibilities to the community, to everybody as people, as human beings, first and foremost. Secondly, as a business, we want to ensure business continuity. We want to ensure that we don't have any negative impact on your businesses, and we can do whatever we can to help you get through these tough times. And I guess also worth noting that technology, we are technology people. We call ourselves the technology Sherpas, and we would like to make those services available to you if you're unfamiliar with things like video conferencing and remote working. Tim will talk a little bit about that later on. How to access your ecosystems remotely, how to look at mobility and so on. We'll see what we can do to help through these difficult times with you. Now, I just need to get my clicker. Okay, let me start off over there. So just a little bit of background, and it feels to me to be a little bit mundane to be talking about this at this point, because there are bigger issues in play than simply talking about the merger of our 2 companies. But Kilimanjaro and Enterprise have undergone a full merger. It makes us by far MYOB's largest enterprise partner. Enterprise was the largest in New Zealand. We were the largest in Australia. We've come together. It gives us a team of over 120 professionals looking after MYOB Enterprise Solutions. And we are able to look after all sorts of clients, from the smallest to the largest. Because the group we're talking to this afternoon are running on MYOB Advanced or are looking at moving to MYOB Advanced, we are going to tailor our content to the larger end of town, but rest assured that we can also deal with the smaller companies if we need to. What we're talking about today is the connected business and an empowered workforce. And I have used the slide a number of times before, but this is the situation that most of you would have come from, and you've moved on to Advanced in an attempt to get onto a unified platform and to go from what we call a disconnected business to actually get to a connected business, where your advanced system, your MYOB Advanced system, is sitting in the center there as your core financial management system, and you are actually able to get real-time data across the organization, which is where you're going, a single source of truth, which is what we want to do. So just a little bit of a journey for those of you that are not yet at this point of being a connected business. How do you get to be a connected business? The first point that I want to make is that all of the modern technology and the new bells and whistles are not going to help you one iota unless you've got your business fundamentals right in the first place. And your business fundamentals mean you need to understand what your strategy is, your strategy, your planning, your processes, your systems. Get those in place first, and then technology kicks in after you've got those basic building blocks in place. The other point to note is that growth is not linear, and as your business grows, your requirements will change. So the approach would normally be to put in a system like MYOB Advanced for your business as it is in the what we would call the future state. So in other words, what you can see. So we come in, we have a look at your current state, we say, where do you want to go? And we configure the system for a future state. However, because none of us have a crystal ball, as time moves on, your requirements do change. And that's why we need to stay in constant contact with you. Don't be scared to come back to your channel partner and to say, my requirements have changed, my business has evolved, my processes have changed, and I'd like to look at some reconfiguration. And to illustrate that, I've got essentially over here a little graph of how business has grown. I'm liking it to the evolution, the stages of development of humans. And on the left-hand side, I've got the attributes, and you can see there that we go from a fairly simple business, and as we go up the scale, we start looking at multiple locations, we're looking at multiple P&Ls, we're looking at more employees and so on. But the ultimate one at the top there is the separation of responsibilities. And it's the separation of responsibilities that makes MYOB Advanced such a good system for these larger, more complex businesses. Generally, in terms of your own growth as a business, you'd start off at the bottom on a basic system. When you have an internal accountant, you might change systems to something a little bit more sophisticated. When you have a financial controller, again, you're going to hit one of these platforms or a glass ceiling to growth, and you're going to change onto a new system. And so generally the systems we're looking at now for you are for larger, more complex and mature businesses. There is also what we call a transition zone. And what we're saying is it's not an easy journey to go from where you are on a small system onto one of these larger ERP systems. You reach your platform, and at that point, it's quite difficult to make the leap onto a larger, more complex system. The main reason being is that somebody like Kilimanjaro Enterprise understands the software, you understand your business, and we have to come to a mutual understanding so that we can actually implement the system. And that transition is not going to happen once in the lifetime of your company. It'll happen more than once. You will put in a system and you will find that at some point in the future, you run out of steam and you go to a bigger system. But the benefit of the system that you're on is it is entirely scalable. So you can go from a small 2-user site up to a 2,000 user site with very, very little additional effort to do that. We also speak about people being on both sides of the divide. And the reason I've popped this slide in here is in case there are people in the audience today that are looking at MYOB Advanced and saying, is this the right system for me? So when you're a young and simple business, you're on this side of the divide, which I call the side of the divide, where you're looking, your focus is simply on getting things done. Your decisions are made as a business owner by your gut feel, by your sense of what's happening in your own business. When mistakes are made, they're easy to rectify. Your accounting system is not really an ERP, it's an accounting system. It's seen as a necessary evil simply for tax reporting. And you've probably evolved from something really simple like BankLink or Xero, from a sort of a spend money and receive money environment into something that's more complex. And you really have a good understanding of debtors and creditors and so on. You have limited workflows in your company, and the workflows you have are workflows that are imposed by the software, whereas on the other side of the divide, which I'll mention in a moment, the workflows are designed by you to suit your business. They're not externally imposed. And so the other side of the divide, and this is where most of you would be sitting now, is you are mature and complex businesses. You have in place the separation of responsibility. You have a requirement for permissions in your organization. You have corporate governance requirements. You've got a management focus. Decisions are made by a structure such as a board based on reporting and analysis of data It's no longer gut feel. You've got to be able to have a look at what ifs in your business. You've got workflow driven processes and all of these other accounting terminologies that the smaller businesses don't have to contend with. So the question is, what does the journey look like? Where am I now and what do I need to do? So I'm imagining that most of you, or if not all, have gone through this process. You're not startup businesses. We do occasionally have startup businesses on MYOB Advanced because it's easy to get into the cloud and because it's so scalable. But generally, these are businesses that have identified a market, they've identified a product, they've got a strategy, they've got a business plan, they've got processes and systems in place. They've gone through a process of efficiency improvement, and they are now reaching a ceiling or a platform to their growth where they need this real-time information across the organization. They also want to start leveraging off insights into data, not only their own data, but external data. And they also want to start looking at business intelligence and data analytics and so on. And this, I guess, is where most of you are in the journey. And this is a little bit of an introduction to how we can help you in doing that. We could also look a little bit beyond that and say, once you've got to that point, using artificial intelligence, machine learning, what are the next steps? And this is really using artificial intelligence to produce business predictions, forecasts, and the use of bots to automate replicable tasks. Not quite there yet. So I thought I'd touch on 8 trends in the IT world at the moment. It is, as I said at the beginning, we're in very difficult times. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody has a crystal ball, and talking about these trends, which are 1 or 2 year trends, feels a little bit uncomfortable when we don't even know what's going to be happening next week. Also a little bit uncomfortable standing in the front over here talking to an empty room, as uncomfortable as the guys would have been playing footy last night in an empty stadium, but we'll keep going on that. So the technologies that I wanted to talk about that are coming at us like a steam train, and a lot of them are available right now for use in your business. Best of breed integrations and APIs, and I will talk a little bit about each of these in a moment. Mobility, especially with 5G, and you would have seen Telstra starting to advertise 5G. Continued growth in retail and B2B e-commerce, the move towards online ordering, online shopping, more ways to pay, which I'll go into some detail, big data insights, the Internet of Things, machine learning and artificial intelligence, and finally, augmented reality. So if I start off with the first one, which is the best of breed integrations and APIs, the world has shifted from where everybody builds their own system in isolation, they lock it down, they protect their intellectual property, to a point where you've got interoperability between systems, and this is what people are trying to do. So people would be developing pieces of software that easily integrate through an API into other pieces of software, and so you end up with a connected universe of businesses. Everything up on the screen over there now are pieces of software that are already integrated into MYOB Advanced, so there is actually a large community of ISV partners, and talk to us if you're interested in any of those solutions. But essentially it allows you to seamlessly integrate what's called best of breed. So an ERP system will cover the basics of what you require and do some of it very, very well. But if you require specialist functionality, you simply integrate that to achieve the single source of truth through true integration, sometimes unilateral, sometimes bilateral integration. The next one is 5G. So 5G does change the world, because what you can do is you can get this interoperability in real time, almost in the same time that it takes a human reflex to react to something. And this opens up all sorts of possibilities. There's almost no latency. So you can automate processes to the point where they're just functioning as per that illustration of cars driving. It doesn't matter if they're driving at 40 kilometers an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, your system can direct them and make sure that there are no accidents, etc., etc. The next one is retail and B2B e-commerce. So growth in e-commerce, if you look at that, the growth in e-commerce in 2020, you're looking at 4.2 billion US dollars in retail e-commerce. B2B e-commerce is a little bit slower, but it's there as well. The trend is exactly the same. And those of you that are not fully engaged in B2B e-commerce, low-touch transactions, clients logging in on-site, ordering in a B2B environment, you need to get on board with that as soon as you can. You also need to be aware that the multi-channel or omni-channel environment is where you need to be. So you can't focus exclusively on one. You still have to have other ways of selling to your clients. And as you know, you're selling to people, you're not selling to businesses. So things like mobility become very, very important. And you can see, I've put some arrows on that slide to highlight which trends are moving to the right, in other words, becoming more dominant, and which trends are moving to the left. And you would know that ordering by fax and email, for example, have pretty much died out in totality. In terms of growth, ways to pay, more ways to pay, the same story over here. We don't see checks anymore. The only people that still send out checks are government departments, possibly bureaucracies that are worried about fraud. But we don't receive checks. I think the last check we received would have been more than a year ago, I would imagine. But we don't even have a daily bank run, which we used to do as a business. Everybody was sending checks in the mail. But credit cards in the B2B environment have picked up enormously. We're in a very, very low interest rate economy. So why would you pay with your money today if you could put it on a credit card? Your creditor can get the money immediately, and you're paying your credit card 30 or 60 days later at very, very low interest rates. That's become quite common. It eases it lubricates the wheels of the transaction if you can simply go order the goods and hit the button. And then the last two over there are mobile wallets. So you see this coming in through the banking system, where you can transfer money into somebody's account simply using their mobile phone number. And you also see other ways to pay with substitutions for debtor financing, whereby you can go online, hit the Pay Now button on an invoice that you've received, or a virtual invoice that you've received, hit the Pay Now button and actually pay your creditor with someone else's money, and have this sort of debtor finance in place at low interest rates. So I think the next one to talk about is the big data, the AI and machine learning. And I'm going to give you an example in a moment about Easy Collect, who's using this already quite efficiently. So I'll skip over that one. The next one was the Internet of Things. Internet of Things becoming very common, and to the point where the Internet of Things is being linked to things like optical recognition, face recognition, and somebody can press your doorbell and the data will pop up on your screen because the Internet of Things will allow your system to recognize who that person is. The next one's machine learning. Now, machine learning is starting to make its way into products like Acumatica. As you know, Acumatica is the back end of MYOB Advanced, essentially the same product with just a little bit of a lag in terms of when we get our new releases. But machine learning may, for example, detect when a user is performing the same tasks over and over again, and it may reorder the menus, or it may start making suggestions. And you can see this in simple products like PowerPoint, where if PowerPoint recognizes that you're trying to do something, it'll pop up with a suggestion, even to the extent of a design suggestion for your PowerPack slides, your PowerPoint slides. And then also coming into this is things like voice recognition, Siri and Alexa, where you can start talking to your MYOB Advanced or Acumatica system rather than having to key stuff in through a keyboard. So these things are coming, and they're coming very, very quickly. Augmented reality, when I put these slides together, I'd actually never seen this happening. But what you could do is you could take a photograph. I thought it was a photograph of your room. You could then drop in a piece of furniture and see how that looks. But in actual fact, we did this morning with a new Apple iPad. Apple has closed their stores. I don't think, yeah, I did put the slide in. There we go. So this morning what we did is I took this photograph, which I'll show you in a moment. I don't even know how to describe this. To me, it's so mind-blowing. But this is the kitchen downstairs at Kilimanjaro, a white table with my cup on and a picture in the background and 2 chairs. There is no computer. There is no Apple iPad on that table. There is no Apple iPad on that table. I can guarantee you there's no Apple iPad. But if you look at Stephen's phone, and he is pointing his phone at my cup, there is an Apple iPad there. And what's even more amazing about this is when Stephen walked around the table with his phone, we could see the back of the computer. Just blows my mind. But this is the reality. This is here. It's here in our augmented reality. So in moving towards the connected business, just from my perspective, just some easy wins that you can get. You've got your system. You've got MYOB Advanced in and running. You are essentially at the cutting edge. You know that the software is being updated frequently and continually. There are millions and millions of dollars being poured into the software, not only by MYOB, but also by the parent company Acumatica. So we've spoken about the multi-cloud world. If you have a problem, speak to us. In all likelihood, there is a solution that's been integrated, and we can talk to you about that. This is a solution. So this here, we're looking at Easy Collect. It is a data management system. You set up a data management workflow. When you create a new data, the system will go to external data available that's been purchased from Ilion, which used to be done in Brad Street, and it will give you a warning about this data and say this data has got some other risks attached to them. So at that point, you're leveraging off real-time external data. The other thing that you can do is as you start transacting with that person, what Easy Collect will do is it will monitor that person's spend with you as a company, but it'll also compare that to what's happening outside in the marketplace. So for example, this first debtor on my list over here is a bad debt risk because there are some things happening in the external market. There may be adverse findings against them. They may not be paying their other creditors on time. Whereas this one at the bottom over here, which is also flagged as a high risk, they are paying their other creditors on time. They're just not paying me. So the chances are that this is a relationship issue. I need to send my account managers out to speak to them and to say, why are you not paying us? They're probably unhappy with our service. So I'm going to leave it there. And thanks very much for giving me the time and listening to me. I wish you all the best in your journey through these times of crisis. And I'm going to hand back now to Chris, our moderator, who will then give us a segue into the next segment.